It was a weapon dismissed as a toy, a joke on the battlefield. But in the frozen hell of the Pacific, on a tiny island of unimaginable violence, one man would transform that laughter into awe. They laughed at his toy flamethrower until it cleared 14 bunkers in 6 minutes. This is the story of a Marine, his unconventional weapon, and a single, furious morning that would become the stuff of legend. We are on Iwo Jima, a volcanic speck of Japanese territory just 650 miles from Tokyo. The date is March 6, 1945. For nearly 3 weeks, the men of the 5th Marine Division have been locked in a brutal, grinding battle of attrition against a fanatical and invisible enemy, dug deep into the island's very rock. The cost has been staggering, measured in yards and lives. And on this day, on a scarred landscape known as Hill 362A, the fate of an entire company would rest on the shoulders of a 22-year-old Marine from Baltimore and the weapon he refused to give up. The strategic situation was simple and dire. Iwo Jima was the keystone of Japan's inner defense perimeter. Its 2 airfields allowed Japanese fighters to intercept American B-29 superfortresses bombing the home islands. For the Americans, capturing it was a necessity, a haven for crippled bombers and a base for escort fighters. But the man tasked with its defense, Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi, was a tactical genius. He forbade wasteful banzai charges. Instead, he engineered a masterpiece of defensive warfare, transforming the island into a honeycomb of over 1,500 interconnected bunkers, pillboxes, and blockhouses, all carved from solid rock and reinforced with steel and concrete. The pre-invasion naval bombardment, the most prolonged of the Pacific War to date, had barely scratched the surface. Into this meat grinder landed the 5th Marine Division. Among them was Private First Class Douglas T. Jacobson, a rifleman with Company I, 3rd Battalion, 23rd Marine Regiment. Jacobson was a quiet, unassuming man, but he possessed a fierce determination. Early in the battle, he had seen the limitations of standard infantry weapons against the Japanese fortifications. Grenades bounced off, rifles were useless, and even bazookas often failed to penetrate the thick embrasures. It was then he made a decision that would define his part in the battle. He voluntarily gave up his M1 Garand rifle and picked up a weapon many viewed with skepticism, the M2-2 flamethrower. Weighing over 70 pounds, the flamethrower was a terrifying and vulnerable piece of equipment. The fuel tanks on his back were a prime target for enemy snipers. A single bullet could turn him into a human torch. Many Marines considered it a death sentence to carry one, derisively calling it a plaything or a toy, next to the trusty rifle. But Jacobson saw its potential. He understood that while it might not blow a bunker apart, it could reach inside, searing the oxygen from the air and consuming the enemy within. What happened next would prove his intuition correct in the most dramatic fashion imaginable. The battle for Hill 362A, a key strongpoint in the northern part of the island, had reached a fever pitch. The 3rd Battalion, 23rd Marines, was tasked with reducing this formidable position. The approach was a killing ground. The hill was riddled with expertly camouflaged pillboxes, their fields of fire interlocking to cover every inch of the barren, ash-strewn slope. Japanese machine guns, primarily the Type 92 and the heavier Type 99, chattered incessantly, their fire pinning down the advancing Marines. Mortar rounds, fired from hidden positions on the reverse slope, rained down with terrifying accuracy. By the morning of March 6th, Company I was bogged down, its advance completely stalled. Every attempt to move forward was met with a storm of steel. A platoon on the left flank was cut to pieces. A bazooka team, bravely exposing themselves to fire a shot at a pillbox aperture, was instantly killed by a crossfire from a bunker they hadn't even seen. The company commander was frantically trying to coordinate supporting fire, but the enemy positions were so well concealed and protected that artillery and mortars had little effect. The heat was oppressive, the stench of sulfur and death clung to the air, and a palpable sense of frustration and dread gripped the men. They were trapped. It was in this cauldron of fire and futility that Private First Class Jacobson made his choice. He saw a concrete pillbox, its machine gun spewing deadly fire, holding the entire company's right flank hostage. The bunker was situated in a way that made a direct assault suicidal. With grim determination, he adjusted the heavy weight on his back, checked the ignition, and began to move. He didn't charge, he stalked, using folds in the terrain and the ever-present clouds of dust and smoke for cover. He worked his way up the slope, ignoring the snap of bullets and the shrapnel whining through the air. He closed to within 30 yards. Then 20. The machine gunners inside, focused on the pinned-down Marines to their front, remained unaware of the lone figure approaching from their flank. Jacobson rose to one knee, aimed the nozzle, and squeezed the trigger. A whoosh of ignited napalm erupted, a liquid sun that shot through the pillbox's firing port. The machine gun fell silent instantly, replaced by screams that were quickly choked off. The first bunker was silenced. But this was only the beginning. The reduction of this single strongpoint had exposed another, and then another. The labyrinth of Hill 362A was now laid bare before him, and Jacobson, a modern-day dragon, was just getting started. The situation, while momentarily relieved, was still desperate. The initial bunker Jacobson destroyed was merely the outer gate of a deeply layered defensive complex. As soon as its machine gun fell silent, another, located 50 yards to the left, opened up, its fire raking the now exposed Marines who had begun to advance. A third, a reinforced concrete blockhouse with steel doors, began firing from a higher elevation. The company was caught in a deadly crossfire once more. Casualties mounted. Medics scrambled from fallen man to fallen man, their Red Cross-marked helmets drawing fire just the same. The company's command structure was fraying. Junior officers and NCOs were falling. Ammunition was running low, especially for the bazookas, which had proven ineffective. Morale was at a breaking point. The sheer number of enemy positions seemed endless. For every bunker they could identify, two more revealed themselves. The Japanese defenders, disciplined and willing to die, fought with a ferocity that was both terrifying and grimly admirable. They were not just defending a hill. They were defending the sacred soil of their empire, and they would sell every inch of it at the highest possible price. For the men of Company I, the prospect of taking the hill seemed impossible. They were facing a seemingly impregnable network of fortifications, manned by a determined enemy, on terrain that favored the defender in every way. The advance had degenerated into a bloody stalemate. To stay put was to be slowly whittled away by mortars and snipers. To advance was to walk into a meat grinder. They were trapped between a rock and a hard place, quite literally. The very ground beneath their feet was their enemy. The sun beat down. The weight of their equipment felt crushing, and the deafening, constant roar of battle was a physical pressure. It was in this moment of supreme crisis, when all conventional tactics had failed, that one man decided to rewrite the rules of engagement. Seeing the new threat, Jacobson didn't hesitate. He was a man possessed, a force of nature channeled through a flamethrower. He moved with a purpose that defied the chaos around him. He began a one-man assault on the entire Japanese defensive line. The second pillbox, the one that had opened up on the left, was his next target. He maneuvered through a gully, the acidic smell of ignited napalm still clinging to him. As he closed in, a Japanese soldier emerged from a spider hole, aiming a rifle. In an instant, Jacobson swung the nozzle and let loose a short, horrific burst, engulfing the soldier before he could fire. He reached the second pillbox. Another long, searing jet of flame shot into its aperture. Silence. But now he was fully exposed. A Nambu light machine gun from a third position, a trench line, began to track him. Bullets kicked up the black volcanic ash at his feet. Jacobson hit the ground, then low-crawled forward, the heavy tanks on his back scraping against the rock. He came up just yards from the trench. He didn't fire into the aperture. He hosed the entire trench line, the liquid fire cascading over the parapet and into the fighting position, consuming everything in its path. What followed was a blur of relentless, brutal efficiency. Jacobson became a whirlwind of destruction. He was no longer just a Marine. He was the weapon itself. He stormed a fourth bunker, then a fifth. He used grenades when the flamethrower's fuel needed to be conserved. At one point, he found a discarded M1 Garand and used it to pick off escaping Japanese soldiers fleeing his flames. He single-handedly assaulted a sixth position, a command bunker, silencing its occupants. His uniform was stained with soot and sweat, his face a mask of grim determination. He moved from target to target with an unstoppable rhythm. The timeline was compressed into a frenzy of violence. In the span of just 6 minutes, a length of time in which a man might struggle to run a single mile, Private First Class Douglas Jacobson systematically assaulted and neutralized 14 separate, heavily fortified enemy positions. 14. He destroyed pillboxes, blockhouses, and a network of trenches. The laughter that had once greeted his toy was now replaced by a stunned, awed silence from his comrades, who watched this one-man army tear the heart out of the Japanese defense on Hill 362A. He had not just cleared a path, he had shattered the enemies while on that sector of the hill. The impossible had been achieved. The impact of Jacobson's solo assault was immediate and decisive. With the key bunkers and pillboxes silenced, the Marines of Company I surged forward, securing the formerly impregnable slopes of Hill 362A. The breakthrough was complete. Jacobson's actions that day did more than just take a hill. They saved countless American lives and broke a critical segment of Kurabayashi's main defensive line, accelerating the eventual fall of the entire island. The human cost of Iwo Jima was horrific. Nearly 7,000 Americans were killed and over 19,000 wounded. Of the 21,000 Japanese defenders, only 216 were taken prisoner. The battle was a testament to human courage and sacrifice on both sides. And in the midst of this epic struggle, individual acts of supreme heroism stood out. For his conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, on March 6, 1945, Private First Class Douglas Thomas Jacobson was awarded the Medal of Honor. The official citation recounts his destruction of 16 enemy positions and the personal elimination of approximately 75 enemy soldiers, a staggering tally for a single morning's work. Jacobson survived the war, passing away in 2000, a quiet hero who had, for 6 furious minutes, held the power of a god of fire in his hands. His story is not just one of raw courage, but of the power of a single individual, armed with the right tool and an unbreakable will to change the course of a battle. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to this channel as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.